Hi, everybody. I'm here with Kristie Perrotte, and we're going to be talking about recruiter enablement. So, Kristie, thank you for joining me. Give us a quick introduction to you and your background.
Yes, so I have entered my 20th year of recruitment, scary as it is, always on the marketing side. So I was a global director for a big Fortune 500 firm for many, many years before starting Thrive 5 years ago. And we work exclusively as a marketing agency, supporting recruitment agencies, talent teams, and vendors to the industry.
Great. Okay. So, what to you, you've got a specific angle on this, I guess, but what to you is recruiter enablement?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go down the marketing route. It's a given. But what I think is interesting, and I'll go back to that 20 years in the industry. You know, when I started the industry, and many, I think there's a lot of recruitment leaders or TA leaders that are around my age who probably had a similar kind of upbringing in it. It was really about call cycles and pounding the phones and yes, there were leads that might be coming in. I think the definition of a lead was very different than what it is now. It was, oh, I have an idea that somebody's hiring and I'm going to give them a call off the back of it.
Yeah.
Today, though, you know, the challenging thing is, yet one, there's technology that enables so much. So the game has changed. And as I say, the challenge is if you don't do it, your competitor is going to. So what recruiter enablement is now is how do you leverage technology? How do you leverage marketing and understanding the pain points and the segmentation, the personalization of that buyer's journey
Yeah.
early in that client or hiring process,
Yeah.
and let automation take care of that.
Yeah.
That frees up your recruiters to be doing the high value touch points, the relationship building, the working the job, making placements. You know, that's what they should be focusing their time, not, kind of that cold calling, just trying to throw some mud on the wall and hoping that it's going to stick. We could just be so much more efficient and therefore so much more productive and profitable by just leveraging some of the technology that's available today.
Okay, you're talking my language. There's about 50 things you've just said that I want to follow up on. So I've got to be selective here, really. The first thing I want to actually talk about really is like, what is, I definitely think the concept of lead generation is an element of recruiter enablement. So you're right. When I started in recruitment, a lead was, I think that company's hiring. That's not a good enough lead today.
No, it's not.
No. What's your definition of a lead today?
Yeah, a lead for me is somebody who has demonstrated buyer intent, both in terms of their intent to purchase, which is maybe similar to what you're explaining there. And when I say, I'm going to use that word buyer quite liberally. It could be a candidate applying for a role, or it could be a hiring manager looking for a job order. So there is an intent. But in addition to that, though, there needs to have certain touch points with your organization. So that, again, this is where the technology comes in. We're able to track and measure how they're engaging with you across their journey. And that might be visiting your website or specifically a web page within it. It might be engaging with different emails from email automation that you can set up with it. It might mean even some of the social engagements that they've had with you. But there's an aggregate. We can ultimately score these leads. We can score these touch points, and we can score them based on how close they are down the funnel. So, for example, somebody may be checking out your one of your emails and clicking on it. Maybe you give them 2 points. Somebody clicking on a case study or something that's like a buying signal or visiting a case study page on your website, maybe you give them 5 or 10 points. The points are kind of irrelevant, but the point being is that they get more value the more of an intent action that they've taken. The aggregate of all these points means that your recruiters can focus on those leads that have the greatest value as a potential buyer to the business versus, again, that scattergun approach.
I mean, for some people that are listening to this, what you've just said is going to blow their mind because they're not going to be, they're not going to have any concept of the fact that you can even track people clicking on specific things on your like online real estate. So and we haven't talked about the concept of lead generation in the context of recruiter enablement. Of the 85 people I've interviewed so far, this is the first time it's come up.
It's
Really,
I hope so.
really exciting. So, okay, lead generation is a big part of it. Let's talk about content. So I've said this a few times, like on this channel, but when I started, everything I was doing was using my voice, and today I think a recruiter is probably using their voice for about 25% of what they're doing, maybe something like that. So there's lots and lots of other things they've got to do in terms of channels and content assets in order to achieve influence. How do you think about that in the context of recruiter enablement?
Yeah, I think you need to be very, very deliberate with what you're putting out. There's a lot of, content for content's sake. And I think there's a difference. I saw a post yesterday that said there's a difference between content and content marketing. Content marketing is one that you're very deliberate with what your purpose is, what are your goals of creating the content, and how you're actually measuring it off the bat. So I think if we go back to that 20-year ago example, let's take what the sales funnel or sales process looked like. I came from, again, a big recruiter that it was very prescriptive. It was, you had these call cycles, and every 2 weeks you're calling them, and that you kind of send them down these tracks over multiple weeks. We can do the same thing with content. So we can look at it, or with automation, I should say, and content.
Yeah.
We can look at if they show you positive buying signals when you're engaging with them. Let's do more engagement. Let's pull them through what that sales journey would look like. It's just automated versus manual call cycle.
Yeah.
If they're less engaged, let's ease off. Let's not let's not harass them effectively. Let's space out the communications. Alongside those communications, though, we're not talking newsletters. We're not talking about just like, oh yeah, touch point. We're talking about emulating that buying cycle. So if they're engaging with you on content that is very top of funnel, you're proving that you are a thought leader, you're validating yourself in your space. If they're engaging with that, you slowly get warmer. And that's when you can start going through your own company's benefits. Again, if you're a recruitment agency, or if you are, a talent professional, sharing, the value of why they want to work with your business. They go a little bit further, and maybe they start getting to case studies, and it almost starts feeling quite sales messagey, but it's coming off the back of you've already established yourself and that credibility, similar to what would have been a manual call cycle 20 years ago.
Yes. So what you're talking about is like campaign strategy, I guess, or like how do you move people through a funnel management? What about at the individual level? Because recruiters are probably not going to be building and managing campaigns. So what about at the individual level? I need content for my first stage outreach to software engineers. That's the classic one, isn't it? Through to I need to know what to say to those candidates who aren't interested in taking the job because they've decided they can't reconcile with working for a company that tests on animals. How do we equip individuals with things that they can use like directly?
Yeah. Again, I mean, the obvious one that a lot of people are going to be doing themselves is their own social media posting, etc.
Yes.
And my recommendation, and I don't always take my own advice, to be fair, but you need a plan and you need a strategy. And it is more than just waking up on a Monday morning and saying, oh, I'm going to post about this. Because if you do that, chances are you're not going to be doing this regularly. And you also won't really have, I mean, some people are very, very good at it, but I'm talking to the masses. You're not going to have the routine, and something else is always going to command your time. So my recommendation is always create your own mini content calendar for the month ahead and schedule it out, and pepper it with different kinds of content. So, you're always going to have your jobs. I mean, that's kind of, if you think of a funnel, that's bottom of funnel. That is, I have a job. I want you to apply for my job.
Yeah.
But if you work up from the funnel, from the bottom of the funnel, you could be thinking about, what testimonials do I have? What case studies? Can I share even some content from my company's blog that maybe I add my own spin and idea on it? Yes, there are some personal pieces as well, motivation posts, etc. Myself personally, and I know this is a controversial topic, but I'm not a huge one I don't like blurring the lines between Facebook and Instagram kinds of content to LinkedIn. I like keeping it professional, part of my personal brand. For me, it's not just about big numbers of likes and shares. It's about that positioning of myself as a thought leader. Um, but there is something in that as well in terms of motivation and some of that kind of leadership topics that you could also be adding in.
Yes.
If I may as well, just to add to that, that social media, what they can, to answer your other point of that with that is if you have a candidate who, yeah, they're not advancing in the process, or, you know, you'll have a kind of different scenarios. There's nothing to say that that recruiter can't also almost create their own mini kind of template library of here, you know, here's my response to this. Oh, and I send them to this piece of content as a nice resource, or, you know, oh, they didn't interview well and that's why they're getting the rejection. Okay, let me point you to some interview tips, whatever it might be. So thinking about it very deliberately in your content, how do you add value at all of those different touch points that you have across the candidate and client journey?
Very great point. I think it's not just about, we shouldn't just be thinking about this in the context of campaign, and we should be thinking about it in the context of one-to-one as well. And I mean, they're both absolutely valid and important. You've mentioned the idea around a content calendar, like an individual content calendar. I think that's a great idea. And furnishing recruiters with a template that they can use, you know, that each person can go and fill in, is a great idea. Another one might be giving them a content calendar and actually filling it with some things. So you talked about some examples of the type of content.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like spoon feeding the calendar is probably not a bad idea as well. And so in terms of like other aspects of recruitment marketing in general, what's the kind of trends, and like what's, just moving away from enablement and just into like, while you're here, I want to get your insight into what are the most important things recruitment teams need to be thinking about today, as marketing is very dynamic and evolves?
Yeah, I think what we've seen an explosion of post COVID, and it's one that I champion a lot. It is that database marketing, because there's so much you can do to set up evergreen programs. You know, we need to, gone are the days that it's just, you know, very, oh, here's a newsletter, and every month you just send them a newsletter. You know, my kind of big thing is you need to have something really newsworthy if you're sending a newsletter, and that's not the necessary touch points that you want to have with them. It's just some random kind of, again, top of funnel, um uh, not meaningful in a sales funnel or what you want to achieve with it. So I've seen automation absolutely explode. Most of the businesses we work with are getting on board, and I get a lot of inbound inquiries about it. So that's huge. It's really exciting, I think, as well. I think the other piece is also bringing their digital presence to a higher level. I think there is this recognition that there is more than just social media to a marketing program. So I think there's a lot more respect, interest, and investment in both SEO and conversion optimization, meaning how do people, if they're going into a Google search or another platform search, how do they find your website? And once they get to the website, how do you get them where you want them to go? Applying for a job, or in a recruitment agency case, obviously submitting a vacancy, or a client requesting a callback of some sort. So it's exciting for me, because this is probably the stuff I've banged on about for a very, very long time. But I think there's a greater respect and possibly excitement for the benefit that marketing can bring, because I think the industry more widely is getting really wise to technology and realizing that there's a lot of different tech that's really going to enable themselves operationally, which then opens their minds to how it can also enable them from a marketing and BD standpoint.
Yeah, okay. Anybody watching this who knows me will know that I couldn't agree more with everything you've just said. So one last, I have to, pun entirely intended, I have to prompt you, because we're in September 2023. Generative AI, what's its purpose in all of this? if any? What's your comments?
It is the reality. The reality is if you're not going to do it, again, your competition's going to do it. But I think we need to be more clever with it. You know, it's not about just getting things done fast and easy. It's about getting the right, well, you just like anything else, what you get out of it is only as good as what you put into it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
there still needs to be, you know, let's call it a vision, you know, a vision, a strategy to what the end asset, I'm going to call it an asset. There's so many versions of what that could be, but what that end asset, what you're wanting to achieve with it, and therefore the prompts, the vision of what you need to be putting into it is going to enable to get what's out of it. Yeah. And then I also still believe in the human touch at the end of it. You can tell when something is written, let's say just a piece of copywriting content, you can tell if it's written just by AI. Use it to formulate your story arc and your storyline.
Yeah.
And then you need to go back in and write it to particularly to both your own personal tone, but also your, you know, if it's corporate content, your tone of voice from a business, because let's not forget brand and all of this. Brand is critical in everything we're doing from a marketing perspective too.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an entirely separate show we could do around the concept of brand. Yeah, I'd like to really thank you very much for coming and joining me. I know people are going to enjoy listening to this, and most people will have learned something from this as well. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
I hope so. Thanks so much.